I have two screens, so I've got my laptop screen here, but I'm actually looking at a bigger screen, so just makes it easier for me to present. And so I'm not, so just hopefully that doesn't distract you too much. And yeah, so I'll do a quick introduction, right? So my name's Sanjay Seth, and originally from the UK, moved over here about 18 years ago. And then yeah, I came over as a technologist. I was working for Citigroup at the time, and I've moved around a few times. And primarily my skill set, my strength, I guess, is data, databases, data store, that kind of stuff, right? So that's where I'm coming from at an angle with you guys. So I just want to make it clear that there's loads of different disciplines within the software technology world, in the software world, right? In software engineering world. So there's, as you probably know, there's folks who develop games. There's folks who develop the front end, like applications like Microsoft and Google, or there's companies like Google, for instance, who do lots of other things. They're very much interested in search engines and other technologies. There's what else is there? There's data science, that kind of stuff, right? So it is a very broad set of disciplines within the software engineering world, but I work in a specific area, which is specifically I work in the finance space, and I work with data, right? So I'm going to give you an idea of what it'd be like if you joined a bank, typically the kind of groups or area that you'd work in. So hopefully you will find this presentation useful, yeah, hopefully you will. And this is kind of I'm just giving you a very high level overview of sort of what happens in the space I work in, the high level kind of concepts, right? So, and then guess what, right, guys? If you've got questions, just jump right in. So I'm happy. Just stop me if you have any questions, right? And then my biggest concern about this thing today is the level at which I pitch the information to you. So I'm a little bit worried that I'm probably pitched it a little bit, maybe for older kids. So I see that there's some younger kids there. So it's okay if you get bored. I'm so sorry. I apologize in advance, right? So, but any questions to start with? Is everyone good? Ashir, you guys are good?
Yeah, I think we're all good here.
We're good. Okay, good. All right, right. No questions. Okay, good. So let me crack on, right? So there's this box here on the left, right? And you can see there's some kind of like what we call a data architecture diagram, right? So typically what happens is in a lot of companies that have quite mature software systems, right? They have multiple systems sitting behind the scenes, right? Multiple systems, and they're kind of like a little mini ecosystem, right? They're living, breathing systems. And what tends to happen is data needs to be shared across these systems. So what's happening typically and what's happened in the past is one of the biggest challenges is to get data from those systems, get data from upstream, and then also that data is also provided downstream, right? So I've kind of got this in text, and I'm happy to share this document with you guys. Ishira, if you want this afterwards, I can email this over to you. But typically, there will be multiple systems that exist within a company, right? And then each system will have its own core capability, right? So if you look on the left, right, I created this hypothetical example of Netflix, right? This is kind of, I'm just hypothetically imagining the systems that could potentially live in a Netflix, right? This is a very simplified view. But my guess is there's one system that maintains a list of all their programs, right? All their programs, all the plots, all the, everything about the programs in Netflix, right? That you can watch, right? Just imagine that's system A. System B tracks all the viewing information, right? So every time you go on and watch a show, every transaction when you're watching a show is tracked in, say, system B, right? So that's going to have a large volume of data, right? Because you can imagine you have like 100 million subscribers in Netflix, for instance, right? You're looking at probably maybe 50 or 60, maybe hundreds of millions of records a day being stored in this system B. So that's a lot of information, right? In system C, say system C contains all the subscriber information. So that lists all the information for the folks who've subscribed to Netflix, like your parents' names. Maybe you have an individual account, right? That's system C. And then there's some boring stuff like system D may just track profit and loss. So it takes data from all the upstream systems, and it needs to figure out, okay, what were my costs? What is our profit? What is our costs? And then system E, which is the interesting one, is maybe analytics. So maybe system E would receive data from all these upstream systems, and it would figure out things like, hey, you know, based on zip code, what's the most popular show, right? Or what particular plots work really well in different states? For instance, that could be analytics, right? So this is where it gets kind of interesting, right? So, but what I'm really trying to explain here is there's multiple systems normally exist within a company, multiple, and if you join a firm, it could be, if you're working in the software engineering world, typically, right, you'll be assigned to a specific system, and then you'd have to learn about the nuts and bolts of that system, the data it receives from upstream. There's this concept of upstream, right? So normally what would happen is there's some process. So, right, okay, I'll take a step back, right? So a system is normally responsible for producing some information, right? That it has a purpose. We call it a core capability, right? What is the system there? What is it trying to achieve? And that's normally defined by the business user. Will say, hey, I need a system that, like based on these four or five boxes here, that's been determined by, say, someone on the business side has turned around and said, like, I need the system to capture analytics. I'm interested in developing programs. I need to figure out the most popular programs. Why are they popular? Is it because of the actors? Is it because of the plot? Is it because of the state that show was appearing? It appeared on. Maybe Florida has shows that they're probably vying more towards gun violence. Maybe if that's really popular in Florida versus maybe sci-fi is more popular in New York, for instance. I'm just guessing, right? So all I'm saying is each system has a core capability, right? And then what will happen is in order for you to achieve that core capability, you've got to receive data from upstream. So if you see, for instance, system B, let me just see, system E, for instance, is downstream of all of these. So these are upstream systems. These boxes above system E are feeding system E. System E cannot operate, cannot produce its analytics until all the upstream systems have provided their data, right? So there's a relationship, right, between upstream, right? And then what will happen is there's systems that are downstream, right? So for instance, system C needs to provide data to system E, right? So if there's an issue with system E, it's going to hold up system E. If there's an issue with system C, it's going to hold up processing in system E. So there's this kind of symbiotic relationship between systems. They're very tight. I wouldn't say they're tightly coupled. They're loosely coupled, but there is a dependency. So I just want you to. So I'm just kind of giving you a little feel about. You'd have to, when you move into the software world, especially in the general space that folks work in, you're going to be assigned to working in the system. You need to understand what data feeds into the system. You also need to understand what data is flowing out. You need to understand the transformation. So data is being transformed, right? So, and then normally there's some kind of user interface that sits on top of each system. So that could be a reporting tool. So this is the other thing, right? A lot of folks specialize in reporting. There's lots of real cool reporting tools out there. I think MicroStrategy is a popular one. Tableau is another one that folks use, right? So there's different reporting tools, but generally they're quite easy to use. And some of the reporting tools actually give the users the ability to create their own reports. So that's the what's happening nowadays is these tools have basically enable business users to sort of build their own reports. They're not relying on a technologist to build a report. But yeah, so that's that's kind of an overview of how the ecosystem of maybe a company, the system, the systems that would live within a company and how they're interrelated. So I don't know. I'm going to pause right now. And where are we for time? So any questions around that? Any questions around that? No questions? No. I feel I pitched it too high a level for you guys. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Question over here. So just say your name and your age really quick.
Hi, my name's Kyle and I'm 9.
Hey,
Does
Kyle.
Stranger Things have a lot of money?
does Stranger Things make a lot of money? I bet it does. I bet it does. And guess what, right? That's a really good question. So if you think of Stranger Things, right? Netflix will probably be interested. They know that that's a really popular show, and then they're trying to recreate the same kind of shows, similar shows, but different show, but they want to recreate that same formula, right? So yeah, that's a really good question, right? And that's where box E at the bottom here would help, right? From in a software engineering world, like Netflix will probably be really interested in the type of shows that are popular. But what makes them popular? Is it the actors? Is it the plot? Those are the kind of things, right? So yeah, good question, Kyle. Yeah. So yeah, Shia, right? I think what I've written up here is a little bit too high level for the audience. I'm just a bit worried because I'm going to lose the audience, right? So maybe I'm going to talk a bit about, okay. What can I talk about, right? So I was going to talk about things like a little bit more complicated stuff like development life cycles, and actually, let me talk about roles. Like put hands up anyone who's interested in being a software engineer. Put your hands up. Who's interested in becoming a software engineer in the group?
It's a large number.
There's a large number of people, right? There's a lot of it, right? And then okay, so I guess, right, you guys have a very typical view of a software engineer, right? What do you think a software engineer is doing? What do you think it typically what do they normally do?
All right.
Go on. Let's have some answers. What do you think? Do you want to get some?
All right, just say your name and your age. What do you think software engineers do?
I'm Julian, and I'm 10, and I think they engineer software.
Yeah.
They engineer software. Very good. Yeah, it's in the title, right? You'd think, right?
Yeah,
You want another answer? Let's take another one. Yeah, is
one
that cool?
more. Oh.
One more answer.
My name is Fiona and I'm 12, and I think they write code to make computer systems and stuff like that.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Right. So that's exactly what I was looking for. So typically, right, you guys are in the audience thinking, yeah, I'm interested in software engineering. I want to become a software engineer. I'm going to write code, right? That's typically what folks believe, right? But actually, in the real world, there's a multidiscipline of roles, right, in the software engineering world, right? And I've got that at the bottom here, right? So yes, there's a lot of folks who write the code. Definitely, there's a lot of folks who write the code, but also there's business analysts, right? So there's business analysts. So that's another discipline. They're the guys who actually capture the requirements. So you're writing code. How do you know what to build? So you need a business analyst to go talk to the end user who will say, yeah, build me this, and they'll write up a document, they'll get the knowledge, and then they will educate the software engineers in terms of what to do. So there's a business analyst. So you may not be, hey, I don't want to write code, but if you're interested in maybe the business area and you're good at liberal arts, like you're good at writing, you're good at English, you write good English, that software engineering world's a good place for you, right? If you're a logical thinker and you can write good English, business analyst is a good role, right? There's also there's people who test, right? So there's whole groups of people who actually test the code. They call them testers, right? So they're testing the code before it goes into production. So yeah, so normally what happens is you'll write some code and you'll work on it and you go, yeah, I think it works. And then there's some testing that goes on. And then eventually that code is rolled out into production and it's live, right? So before it goes live, because you don't want it to break anything, you need people like testers to come along and ensure that the code's working as expected, right? So it's testers. There's folks like project managers. So project managers organize, make sure the project's running on time, make sure everyone's, all the people in the team have got work. There's not one person sitting around, reading his phone, right? Versus some guys working really, really hard. So the idea of project manager is to evenly distribute the work amongst the team to make sure everyone's working at the same level, right? Project manager, keep projects on track. So there's lots of different roles in the software world. Okay, so what do you guys think it would be really good? What's helpful to go to software engineering? What skills? What do you think you need to be a good engineer? Do you think you need maths, English, history? Like what do you think is that?
We've got an answer over here.
Good answer.
You need to
Okay.
be really
You need to be really stubborn because you just if you're like, stubborn, you're not like
Right.
wanting to do anything. No.
Right.
You have a question earlier, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
you need to be stubborn. Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks. I'm going to stop sharing because you know what? I think the stuff I had on my screen is probably not going to fly for you guys, right? So yes, I mean, actually, stubborn's not going to work actually in the long run, right? So you have to actually work well in a team, actually. So one of the things, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to unhook this thing. Sorry, let me just maximize my screen here. Here we go. Right. Yeah. So yeah. So one of the things is actually, so who said stubborn? What was the name? What was the name of that person? Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. It's not that majorly important, right? So yeah, actually, one of the characteristics is you got to work as a team, right? So it's a little bit like building a house, right? So building software is like building a house. You're normally working in a team, and everyone, you know, like if you got one guy building a house, it's going to take like years for that one guy to build a house because you got to do the foundation, the electrics, the pipes, the dry rock, you know, the roofing. There's so much there, right? There's all these different components that go into building a house. It's the same with software engineering, right? There's lots of different pieces of work, code that needs to be written. And so one of the key things is one of the key characteristics is you need to be good at communicating, right? To if you have a problem, you try to solve it. And then if you can't solve it, you need to go out and ask for help, right? You've got to be a good communicator, and you've got to work well as a team. You've got to help others, right? So folks who need help, you're going to step in and help them out, right? And then you've got to be patient. Patience is important as well because, you know, sometimes it can be frustrating, like things not working, or maybe there's too much work that you have to do, and you've got to like, you know, get it finished. So there's lots of good characteristics. Stubborn, the only thing would be useful for stubborn is don't give up, right? So that I'd say be stubborn in terms of don't give up. Just keep trying. Don't take a failure. Just keep working through the problems, right? So so what I was going to say. So anyway, so long story short is, you know, the only thing you really need to be a software engineer is a logical thinker, right? So you don't even need to be like brilliant at maths. You just need to be a logical thinker. And if you're a logical thinker, you can go into the software world. And then the other thing I just want to tell you is, as I mentioned earlier, is there's lots of different disciplines and roles within the software engineering world. So you can find those, right? So don't just try to approach it with open eyes in terms of there's lots of different opportunities in the software world. So if you feel that you're not going to be you don't want to be a coder, but there could be other things that you could do within that space, right? So so that's it. And then what else am I going to say, right? So yeah, yeah. Let me try to explain what else do we do, right? Okay. So maybe I'll quickly talk about myself, right? Really quickly. I hate to do this. When I was 18 in England, you get results, right? And that determines they're called A levels back in the day. They're called A levels. So you sit like 3 A levels, and then that determines what courses you consider university. I got one decent grade, and the other 2 grades I got terrible grades. I didn't do well, right? And I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And then my brother turned around to me and he said, "Oh, Sanjay, you should go into software. It's the future." So I was like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah, it's a great idea. Maybe I'll take a look." And lo and behold, I rang around a few universities, and this one university accepted me. It's Cardiff University, and they said, "Oh yeah, you're half decent at maths. You know, come on board." So I went on one of the first computer science courses at university in that university actually, and so yeah, and initially I hated writing code because I'd never written code before in my life, right? But eventually I grew to really enjoy it, and I realized it's something I wanted to do as a career. So all I'm saying to you guys is, you know, it's a really broad area to work in. There's lots of opportunities there. Companies can't find enough software engineers, and you know, the future is technology. It's innovation. It's technology. So it's a good place to look look at if you're interested in that career. It's not a bad place. You should normally always be able to find work. So yeah. But yeah, I was going to talk about a few other things, but I think it's probably a little bit too high level for you guys. I wanted to talk about databases and stuff, but I feel that it's probably not appropriate. Is there any questions you guys, got any questions around,
Yeah, we have a few.
working in the software world, like what challenges are? Have you got any?
Yeah, we have a few questions here in my room.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey.
My name is Stefan. I'm 15, and I
Oh,
wanted
hey.
to ask about the like Netflix systems, about like each system and how, like, what are the different kinds of, I guess, sets of skills we need for each system. Like, I know that there's gonna be a difference between like analytics and like some maintenance.
Oh. Yeah, that's a really good question, right? So it depends, right? So Stefan, right? So what's happened, right, is software's been around for like 20, 30 years now, like software engineering and software solutions have been around 20, 30, 40 years. So and what's happened is that those technologies evolved over time. So so if you join a company, there's going to be a mix of legacy kind of technology and then the newer technology. And then the younger folks obviously want to work on the newer technology, right? But yeah, the answer is there's no hard and fast rule. You're going to find a hybrid set of technologies. So there's things like COBOL was really popular back in the day, which there's very little COBOL left. But then there's the traditional databases like Oracle. But now there's a concept of big data, right? And I was going to touch on that, but yeah, big data's it's a big data is sort of technology that a lot of companies are moving towards. So the idea is when I showed that photo earlier of those systems interconnected. Now, if you use big data, all of that data could be stored in a data lake. So then getting the data between systems becomes very easy because you're just like getting access to their folders and reading their data. So things like big data and data lakes is kind of the future where it's moving towards. And then the other thing it's moving towards is Amazon, right? So or Amazon or the cloud, right? So there's historically what's happened is companies would pay for their own software installations, their data centers where their computers are sitting, and they deploy the software to these data centers, right? But it's very, very expensive. And then also if you need to upgrade your, just like if your computer, you want to get a new Apple Mac, it's quite expensive, right? So the same is true for a data center, right? The hardware needs to be upgraded, it's old. So, upgrading those machines becomes quite expensive. Maintaining data centers become really expensive. And that's why the cloud is a really great idea that I think Jeff Bezos, his people came up with the original. And then a lot of other companies provide the same service, like Azure for Microsoft, and Google's doing the same thing. And then the idea there is basically you deploy your code and data to the cloud. It's a bit like you have Google Photos, right? You can have Google Photos or iPhotos, but everything's stored on the cloud. It's the same concept. You're deploying all of your software and all of your data into the cloud, and then they worry about all of the hardware. So think of your software and your data as you own that. The hardware you don't own. You're kind of renting it. You're not even renting it. You're just using a service that, say, these cloud companies provide. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but the technology and the way companies are moving towards is more towards the cloud because it's way more optimal, and it also allows you to you might say, for instance, there's certain times that you're running a process and it needs a lot of CPU. Can I say that? Right. So say, for instance, you've got one machine. If you could harness two MacBooks together, it would be really powerful. The idea is Amazon allows you to do that, right? So you could harness as much horsepower as you need for a very short amount of time and then give it back. So it's kind of how can I put it, right? It's a very efficient way of the way the cloud's set up. It's very efficient for companies. So it's a very attractive way of having software running. It's a lot cheaper in the long run. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. Stefan. So
Thank you.
rambling answer.
Thank you. No, that was
Yeah,
good.
yeah. But long story short, right? When you join a company, if you go into this space, it's not always clear what technology you'll be using. So you have to be very adaptable and just be open to maybe learning some more legacy stuff, and then eventually, once you're in the company, you can normally move around and move towards, say, stuff that the type of technology that that's your preference. So that's normally the way it works. But initially, you tend to have to stick with what's given to you initially. Yeah. So yeah. Okay? So Stefan, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure. Is there any other questions? That was a good question. Anything? Any silly question? Is there free coffee at work? Anything?
Hi. We
Oh,
actually.
Caroline. Oh, hey.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah, good. What's going on?
Okay, Rosie. Yeah. You say your
Hi.
name and your grade.
Hey,
Hi.
Rosie. Hi.
Hi, I'm Rosie and I'm 9. What do you love most about your job?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. Oh my God. Thank you for that. Wow. So the stuff I really enjoy doing is just how can I do? Yeah, I like designing stuff. I'll be honest with you. That's what I like doing. I like to design things, and what I tend to do is I'll build something and I'll see if it works, and then I give it to other folks to build. But yeah, I like to design stuff, Rosie. So yeah, I like to design software, just high level. Yeah, that's my thing. And I do like working with other people. I'm a kind of people person, so it's nice you do work in big teams. So you meet a lot of people. So it's quite social in that respect. So yeah, working with the guys, working in a good team, and then I personally like to design solutions. Yeah, good question though. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
We have a question in our room. So say your name and the question.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I'm 9 again. But
Hey, Carl.
do you go into work or do you work virtually?
Yeah, that's a great question actually. So yeah, I used to go to work 5 days a week. I'd never worked from home actually, but before COVID, in fact, it was kind of frowned upon to be at home. So I always came, and I liked coming into the office because we used to live in Manhattan. So I used to jump on city bikes and cycle to work, drop my bike off, and it was a nice way of getting some fresh air. And then you hang out in the office and you get lunch and you hang out with your buddies. So I used to love going to work to the office. And then now with COVID, the plan is to go, it's kind of a hybrid model. So now a lot of people are doing a combination of some working from home, some days working from home, some days in the office. And then you try to coordinate when you guys meet in the office. So you pick the days, you let your team know, go, hey, I'm in these days, and then you hang out with your office buddies. So it's kind of nice. You get lunch together, and maybe you can brainstorm and stuff. So yeah, long story short, I do a hybrid. So I don't think I'll ever go back to working 5 days a week. I think that's done. That's the new reality. And then the other thing about COVID, what folks have learned from COVID is we can still be really effective working from home, right? So back in the day, people, a lot of companies would be wary of folks working from home. They thought that they're not being productive. And then I think that thing's been blown away, that concept. So now companies are fully aware that folks are very productive regardless of where they work. And then also companies are very flexible. They want to retain their staff. So they're allowing, but now the tables have turned. Workers can now demand that they can work from home. So yes, it's a nice situation. We're in a situation where we can choose, so there's a lot more flexibility at work, which is really great. So I can spend more time beating up my children, or should I say they beat me up? I think. Yeah.
We have one question in here.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, my name is Jack
Hey,
Armstrong.
Jack.
What made you want to
Jack.
join Netflix?
Oh yeah, no, you know what? I didn't. Right, okay. I didn't join Netflix. I just use Netflix as an example because of it was just easier to explain. So I work for a bank. I don't work for Netflix. Yeah. But I would love to work for Netflix. I think that'd be a great company to work for. Maybe I'd get a free streaming service. It's got perks there. But no. But you guys should definitely look, if you go into software, definitely try to look for those good companies. Those, finance can be a little bit boring. I'll be honest with you. It's not that. How can I put it? It's interesting, but not as interesting possibly as things like Amazon and Netflix and these big software companies. So yeah. But I'm sorry if I misled you. I don't work for Netflix.
We have another question in our room. So. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Billy, and I have a
Hey, Billy.
question.
Sure.
Are you British? And if so, are British people real?
Well, I think we are a figment. We just talk funny, but yeah, we are real. We are real. Yeah, I'm originally British. Yeah, yes, really originally born in England. Yes, we talk a little bit strange. Some may say we speak correctly, but I mean that's just I'm not saying that.
So we're gonna also have another question here.
Besides your well, I'm Christian. I'm 10 years old. Besides your job, is there any companies you work for most of the time?
I'm going to turn that around, right? I'll say I work for Yeah, that's a good question actually. So what tends to happen is you just stick to that one job, and then you stop your job, you finish your day job, then you spend time with your family or you do stuff. You could call that the work-life balance. But some people do have multiple jobs, right? So I have been tempted to do other things beyond work, like maybe set up your own company or have some consultancy. But right now I'm not doing that. I just do one job right now. But that's a good question. And yeah, I mean, these days with the way work is, you can definitely have another job on the side. I think quite easily, because now people are working from home. You can probably maintain a side gig, if I can call it that. Yep.
All right. One more question.
So does it depend on like how big the company is, depending on the servers that like hold stuff? Like, for instance, like more of a simple and more tame game where you don't need like accounts, like for instance, I'm not joking here, Among Us, or that really weird Raid Shadow Legends game. Like, do those need more? Do they need like less? I mean, like big computers, less big computers to hold all the information because they're more mobile games and
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question, right? So yeah, they're just going to need more. So that's what happens, right? With so back in the day, right? Storage was very expensive. So back in the day, storing data was just expensive for companies to do. But as technology's evolved, storage has become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It keeps getting cheaper. So now storage is really cheap. And so companies, there's just so much data out there. So yeah, so based on what the company wants to do, you could retain an infinite amount of data, but then what are you going to do with it, right? But some companies may need to store a ton of data based on their business model. So yeah, so for instance, in finance, right, we need to store 10 years worth of data. So we retain data for 10 years, because the folks who oversee us, they call them auditors, demand that we retain data for 10 years. But we don't keep all of the data. We just keep the key data. Some companies may need to keep a lot of additional data, which means they need more storage. It is more expensive, but it is getting cheaper. It's getting cheaper over time. And then if a company needs to keep expanding its data requirements, it would make sense to use something like the cloud, because otherwise you're going to have to keep buying new hardware to store data. Whereas the cloud, you can just go, hey, I need some more storage. It's almost like a configuration change. You go in and you can expand your data storage. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, based on what you're doing as a business, that will drive how much data you need to retain. Yeah.
We have another question in here.
Sure. Yeah.
And
any game you made, what would be your favorite?
Say again. I didn't make.
Any game you made, what is your favorite?
I didn't. I don't make games. I'm sorry. I wish I did, because then I could retire better.
Wait, then what did you make?
Oh, what it did? Yeah, it's very good. So good question, right? So what I make is, it sounds really boring, is the stuff I do is I design databases. That was the thing I tended to do, and like design and store data, design the databases where the data is stored. That's basically what I do for different teams. So I've moved around. So that's my speciality. Yeah. So I don't make games. I'm on the what you call the back end. You know, we don't. Yeah. So there's guys out there who make stuff that you see, and they're, you know, that they get all the how can I say it? They get all the respect. The guys who do the back end, we're kind of like, you know, behind the scenes. So I'm not. Yeah. I can't
Awesome.
name. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All of our students really appreciated you hearing from
Yeah.
you.
It was lovely to meet you guys. It was lovely to meet you guys. All your questions were fantastic, especially the British one, whether I'm British or not, because hopefully I've demystified that fact for you, because I actually have a really strong American accent, and I was putting this on for the whole. No, all of the questions were great, and I really enjoyed meeting you guys. And I'm sorry I should have talked to you, Ashir, before I did this thing, because I would have changed the pitch a little bit. It was a little bit high level. So I started off, I realized that I kind of backtracked, but hopefully it was some use to the guys out there. So.
Thank you so much. Yes. So everyone, you want to give a big bye to Mr. Seth? Let's all wave goodbye.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
I'll
much.
see you at 10.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Ciao.